Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something really interesting one of you shared with us. It's an essay called Sometimes Understanding is Enough.
Right, by Jaime Hoerricks over on Substack.
Exactly. And it's a very personal piece. Jamie talks about this slow unfolding of self.
Involving things like HRT, relationships, memory. It's quite layered.
It is. And what's key is that it's framed as discovery, not some big reinvention story.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it so resonant. The piece isn't really about finding answers or making big declarations.
No.
It's more an exploration, isn't it? Looking at those internal shifts we experience.
Yeah, and the power that just comes from naming feelings.
And this central idea, which is right there in the title, that sometimes just understanding is the goal. It's valuable in itself.
Yeah, so that's our mission today, really, to
Well,
kind of unpack those insights about personal growth, the subtle stuff.
really subtle but significant stuff, yeah.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this. One of the first things that jumped out at me was this pressure Shamie describes.
The insistent expectation.
Yes, that feeling like every internal shift has to lead somewhere concrete. You feel something, so you have to name it, act on it,
Define it, maybe announce it, put it out there.
right? There's this cultural thing, isn't there? Prioritizing the visible action.
Oh, definitely. Society loves a clear narrative, a measurable result. Action equals progress, sort of thing.
But Jameis' point is that some changes are, well, different, more like undercurrents.
Exactly. These interior movements, as they call them, they don't necessarily need a stage or a quick fix.
They just happen inside, quietly.
And maybe our focus on external validation sometimes makes us overlook the importance of just processing internally, which can be just as vital.
This connects to something else Jamie gets into the experience since starting HRT, this ambient change.
Yeah, not just physical, but in their access to emotion. It's like the world feels different.
Can you say a bit more about that, this increased access?
Well, the way Jamie describes it is fascinating. They talk about words arriving where before there was only weather.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
Isn't it? It captures that feeling of vague unease, like being in a fog, emotionally.
Before you have the language for it.
Precisely. But now with the words, there's this ability to identify the feeling, to name it. And because of that, to actually sit with feelings they used to run from.
Because they couldn't label them before.
Exactly. It kind of challenges that purely mind-based view of emotions, doesn't it? Suggests a deeper body-mind link.
And that leads right into this idea Jamie has of understanding as staying. It's not about understanding to solve something or get over it.
No, it's more like understanding as respect, a kind of reverence, even.
Yeah, that really hit home for me, just being present with whatever's come up.
Exactly. The goal isn't a quick resolution. It's more about tracing the outlines of these feelings,
Yeah.
honoring them just by noticing them.
So understanding as staying shifts the focus away from action towards contemplation, acceptance.
Acceptance, I think that's a good word. It's like, imagine visiting a new place. You don't immediately try to change it.
You just observe it, take it in.
Right. You allow yourself to just be there. And maybe that's what staying with our feelings means sometimes, just acknowledging them without that knee-jerk reaction to fix or dismiss.
Okay, and to really get the depth here, I think the context of Jaime's past is important too.
Definitely. Growing up in Santa Rosa, late 80s.
Yeah, amid creativity, queerness, but also the AIDS epidemic, it sounds like exploring identity then was complex, both brave and maybe a bit fraught.
Absolutely. That era, especially in queer communities dealing with the crisis, it was a time where identity was so vital, but also carried real weight, real risk.
And Jamie talks about not having the language for their own experience back then.
Right. The labels available were so rigid, weren't they? Gay or straight, man or woman, very binary.
Which led to silence, feeling like they didn't quite fit anywhere.
And that environment, you can see how it might contribute to that later feeling of lacking the words. Then there's the later realization about being autistic and Gestalt processing.
How does Gestalt processing fit in?
Well, it's about taking in information more holistically, as a whole, rather than piece by piece. So maybe Jamie experienced feelings as a kind of general state, a whole weather pattern, without immediately breaking it down.
Which might delay pinpointing specific aspects of identity or emotion?
It could, yeah. It adds another layer to understanding that journey.
And this lack of ready-made language, it seems like it also really affected their experiences with desire, with connection.
Oh, for sure. James talks about it not being linear. not fitting the expected scripts.
Leading to that feeling of doing something wrong or missing something fundamental.
Exactly, which is so important when we think about neuroqueerness, that intersection of neurodivergence and queer identity. Or concepts like demisexuality, needing that emotional bond first.
Terms Jamie didn't have back then.
Right. But that feeling of being displaced, not disinterested, but just operating differently, that rings true for many people whose experiences don't map neatly onto the dominant narratives.
And things like the temporary nature of college probably didn't help.
Likely amplified it, highlighting that need for something deeper: space, time, trust, realness.
It sounds like, in a way, Jamie was already living in the gray, writing their own script, just without the vocabulary yet.
That's a great way to put it. Already neuroqueer, in essence, before the term was widely known or available to them.
But even without those specific words, they built a life. Their relationship, especially, sounds like it started from a place of real steadiness.
Yes, and resonance. It wasn't about fitting into roles or labels they didn't have.
It was about the connection itself, listening, feeling that sense of truth.
Exactly. Jamie emphasizes mutuality, respect, presence. That was the core. It speaks to a really deep intuitive understanding of partnership.
More about ongoing attunement than performing a role.
Precisely, like
Correct.
constantly tuning into each other, meeting each other where they are. And that deepened, it seems, with children, developing these shared gestalts, these shared understandings rooted in daily life.
Care rhythm home.
Where Jamie felt truly known, not just labeled.
Then comes this really pivotal moment starting HRT. And it wasn't gradual, it was this shock of access and clarity.
Yeah, sharp, clear emotional voltage. It sounds incredibly intense.
Like a dam breaking, you said earlier. Suddenly, access to all these feelings that didn't have words before.
It's striking, isn't it? That sudden clarity after feeling like things were murky for so long. The wall-dropping analogy is powerful.
And it wasn't always comfortable, apparently.
No, but consistently accurate and real. That sense of finally aligning with something authentic inside, even if it was disorienting. Like hearing your own voice clearly after years of distortion.
And eventually, that initial shock kind of settled, became more like a tide of feeling.
More manageable. Allowing for this process Jamie calls refiltering and recalibration.
So not just feeling more, but feeling differently, seeing nuances.
Exactly. It wasn't about creating brand new emotions, but more like the lighting changed. Those previously shadowed feelings came into focus with more color, more depth.
Being able to tell sadness from despair, for instance, or feeling desire in a softer way.
Right. It suggests a much richer, more textured inner landscape, becoming more finely tuned to the internal world. A more complex and authentic self-experience, really.
And alongside this clearer emotional landscape, the language started to grow too.
Yes, but crucially, language for themselves.
Not primarily for explaining to others.
That seems to be the emphasis. It's an internal development. This allows that understanding, that ability to just dwell with feelings, to honor them.
Without that constant pressure to do something about them immediately.
Exactly. The act of naming more becomes this pathway to deeper self-awareness, self-acceptance. Understanding isn't just a tool to fix things anymore.
It's a way of being present with your own experience.
The way of residing within it.
And even more recently, the shifts sound quieter, a soft retuning.
Yeah, not the big dramatic changes from the start, but maybe more subtle. An increased awareness of the finer textures of things once taken for granted.
Which brings us back to that core idea, doesn't it? Sometimes just naming the shape of the weather inside, that's enough.
It does. It's like we're all, in our own ways, mapping our inner worlds, learning the emotional landmarks, the terrain.
Internal cartography.
That's the phrase Jamie uses, yes. These quiet shifts show that self-discovery is ongoing, often subtle. The way desire feels now, more like an invitation than a demand.
That's a beautiful distinction.
It shows a deepening awareness. And the emphasis is still on respecting these shifts, learning to sit with the new feelings without needing an immediate action plan.
Just mapping the territory, even if you don't plan on, building anything there right away.
Precisely. Understanding the internal landscape for its own sake.
So if we were to wrap this up, the big takeaway feels like, well, sometimes the understanding itself is the point.
I think that's it, really. That act of looking inward, naming what you find, witnessing your own process unfolding, that has profound value on its own.
It doesn't always need a big external result or a dramatic story arc.
No. Jamie's piece really highlights how these internal shifts are often continuations, deepenings of who we already are. They invite more self-awareness.
And the value is in the honesty they allow, being able to meet yourself without flinching.
Yes, meeting yourself with more compassion, more acceptance, and of course, the importance of supportive relationships in that process really comes through too.
That steady partnership, providing the space for it all.
Exactly. That safety and spaciousness are crucial.
Which leads us to a final thought for you listening. Think about your own inner world for a moment. Are there subtle shifts happening there?
hmm Feelings that might be present, maybe still unnamed, that don't necessarily need a 5-point plan attached to them.
Perhaps, like Jamie found, just noticing them, maybe giving them a name, letting them be. Maybe that's a really powerful form of self-understanding in itself.
Something to consider.
Definitely something to consider. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.